All right. Well, Ash, thanks for joining me, friend. How are you today, man?
Good. How you doing?
Audio
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, audio. Anywho, dude. So go ahead, tell everybody about yourself. I mean, obviously, we're here for the Understanding War podcast because, general idea, we just want to be able to spread awareness to people about what it is the soldiers really go through. I think there's a really bad misconception. You, as a guy with what was it, 22 years in,
Yep. 22 years.
and literally a guy who wrote the book when it comes to marksmanship, correct? So
Yep. Yeah. Got a chance to do that. Had a bunch of help on there, but we'll get into those stories. But yeah, just did a bunch of came in 1995, long before the war started. Um, Came in as an engineer first, and then while I was the engineer, dude, was in Hawaii, and my neighbor was his dad and his grandfather were both SF. So we drank a lot of beer together, and we actually met at Fort Leonard Wood before we went to Hawaii. And talking to him, and then he decided that he was going to go to SF. Well, one of the fun things with him, he was wearing PFC rank because he had got out. Had been time of the regiment, did Panama with the regiment, got out, got back in. So he's running around with PFC, with the CIB, Ranger tab, or no Ranger tab, Ranger scroll. Um, and as a PFC though, that was pretty fun. But we drank a lot of beer together in Hawaii. And then he was like, I'm going to SFAS. And I was like, I want to be a cool boy too. And he went like two classes before me, or two selections before me. And while he was at selection, I blew out my fucking ankle. And so tried to get it rehab. Went to SFAS, got medicaled out like within the first week. And then I was like, man, this sucks. And I thought I was going to be a super cool guy. And that didn't work out. So then I reclassed, and my penance for getting it reclassed 19 Delta. Um, and while I was waiting on my school date, the Army decided to punish me for reclassing by sending me to Port Drum, New York in January from Hawaii. Um, and I'd been down to Panama for about 3 months, came back, and then went to Hawaii. So I hadn't been cold like from February of '96. And then they dropped me off of Fort Drum in January of 2000.
God.
And I was driving an '84 Camaro, and I lost my car. Like we got it, came in on Saturday, Sunday, lost my car. It rained, snowed like 18 inches overnight when I first got to Fort Drum. So couldn't find a stupid ass Camaro in all this freaking snow that was up there. But basically, so I got reclassed and everything before the war started. September happened. September 11th happened. I was already on orders for Korea, and even the like division sergeant major and then the division commander called down to branch to get me to stay in the division. I was at 10th Mountain, to stay in the division to go to Afghanistan with them, and they were just like, nope, he's on orders for Korea. So while my division goes off to Afghanistan, I went to Korea. Came out of Korea and ended up in Fort Polk, Louisiana. As soon as I got there, I hadn't even gone to CIF yet. I'd been in. That was like seven. Yeah, like seven. Like, well, we're at 6. When I went to.
So I mean,
So,
you're getting ready to PCS to go to Korea, and then 9/11 happens. They're like,
right.
absolutely not. We want you to stay.
Yep.
You end up having to go anyways. Still a year back then, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was still a year. Still a year.
Did you get your buckle?
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
really? Oh,
Yeah. And then so Korea was fun. I don't remember any sober really time in Korea. That's what everybody's going off to war, right? So we were just like, oh, we're a piece of shit because we're not in the big game. Um, and we're just sitting over there getting drunk, feeling sorry for ourselves. And people were like, hey, the North Koreans are right there and wanting to kill you. And we're like, yeah, but they're not here. So, um, but after I left Korea, that did the year in Korea, came back. Um, had been there, signed into the unit on the 10th, and was doing. They did CIF really weird at Fort Polk, but the CIF appointment was like 3 weeks later, and on the 27th of March, so I've been there 17 days. They alerted us, and we packed up all of our trucks and as we were getting shit ready, they're like, "Hey, you're going to CIF to get." Everybody was going to get special draw of like DCUs and all that. I'm like, "Well, I don't even have CIF yet." I literally got my CIF draw and sent all the shit that I didn't need to go to war, and went and got on an airplane and was in Iraq. 18, it was about a 20-hour flight. Went straight into Iraq. We were the only battalion-size element that was not on the ground at the start of the ground war that fought in the ground. So
where did you guys land?
We landed in Kuwait, and then we drove up, and we basically linked up with, when 82nd was taking the JOF, we linked up with them just as they were finishing the JOF, and then we went chasing. They sent us up to view. 101st did. Who did they do after that? 101st is going north from the JOF, so maybe I can't remember what the town was, but we were 3 days late for everything. And they just kept bumping us up.
So they crossed the berm, and then you come in 3 days behind them, or?
Yeah, pretty much. That's
really?
pretty much how it worked out. Yeah. So we were just chasing them, because we got on ground on the, pretty sure it was like the 27th or 28th of March when we got on ground.
So you're literally just like, how chaotic is that? I'm assuming, like, did you guys know what you were going to be doing, or were they just like, go that way until you find the 82nd, or go that way until you find, whoever? He's back.
Start telling war stories, and shit starts happening.
Yeah, I guess all the ghosts of our past, right? So, I mean, did you guys have a clear, defined mission as you're crossing the border, or was it just kind of go and link up and break shit and kill people?
They were like, go north until you see 82nd patches. And then, so we drove north until we saw 82nd patches. And then 82nd was like, "Who the fuck are you?" They're like, "I don't know." They put me on an airplane, dropped me off here. And so we moved I can't even remember right now, but we linked up with 82nd. We escorted their like division main up the road a little bit. And then whatever was after Najaf, or right before Najaf. And then they put us at 101st, and 101st was like, "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" And we're like, "Yeah, we just all gathered up and just decided to go to war." And they hand us the airplane. Here we are. We want to be part of it. So then what they did was they sent us up to relieve the Marines in Sadr City, and so because the Army was taking Sadr, or was taking Baghdad, and the Marines were going to take Fallujah, and so they pulled all their stuff out. So they dumped us off in Sadr City and said, "Do war stuff." And that we spent the year trying to figure that out. That was all that reconnaissance by drawing fire, because there was no mission. They're like, "This is your sector, go patrol." Like, what are we patrolling, right? There was nothing that even met the, you look at the principles of patrolling and all that sort of stuff. There was nothing that was matching any of that. Go drive around. And we're like, "Well, what are we looking for?" And they're like, "Bad guys."
How many months did it take you? How many months did it take you all to get up to Najaf? I'm sorry, Sadr City. You said it was Sadr, right? That you were calling.
We were actually in Sadr by, our first contact was the 11th of April, so we were probably up there by maybe the 5th or so of April.
So you guys were moving.
Like, yeah, we because nobody wanted us, so they were just like, "Go that way. Here's food. Go that way."
Yeah,
we were just like driving around. And I remember one night we just stopped and did a TCP. They're like, "Do a TCP." They called us on the radio, and they're like, "Do a tactical control point at this grid," right? So we stopped. There's no cars on the road. There's no convoys on the road. We're just sitting out in the desert on the highway, we were just doing that for activation. I think they have a report to send higher, and we just sat there for like a day in the heat. We're just like, and we can hear, we're close enough to Baghdad at that that point that we could hear, his third ID was like taking Baghdad. We could hear that, catch some artillery and, hear aircraft going over and all that stuff. But we're just sitting out in the desert. Like there's nothing going on. It was like a really bad camping trip. So yeah, like I said, first contact was like on the 11th of April, in Sadr, but they just had us just driving around like complete retards. And so we started to keep the guys because when you can't, and I was
I gotta ask, man. So, I mean, obviously it's not city, like constant urban environment, and then eventually you reach Sadr City.
right.
You're driving. There's Sadr. Did you guys stop short kind of and then move in, or were you guys like, we're just going to keep driving until we get there and then just drive?
Yeah, they're like the Marines. They're like the Marines have your base, everything's secure, getting up there and just drive up here and basically knock on the gate. And we get there and this young Marine Lance Corporal's like on gate guard, and he's like, "What are you guys doing here?" We're like, "We're here to relieve you." I guess I don't know, man. I haven't known shit in fucking 5 days. I don't know. We're just keep driving, and I'm ready for place to hang my fucking hammock up. And it was just chaos. Um, but all that turned out a little bit better for us in the end. But we got into Sadr, got some stuff figured out. We started going on patrols for cold soda, and we like, because we're finding bad guys was almost impossible at that point. They weren't doing IEDs yet. It was when Iraq was good. That was like it was all small arms, maybe some RPGs, stuff like that. But there was no IDs. You pretty much go where you wanted to. But just to keep people focused, we're like, hey, we're looking for an ice cold Pepsi. That's what we're looking for on this fucking. So people be like, they see Pepsi and they'd be like, nope, it's hot. And you just try and keep the guys fucking cued in, because when you get complacent, that's when people start getting smoked, right? So you got to have them looking for something. You can't just be like, hey, we're going to drive around like fucking. But I remember one of the big things from this point, and it's just that transition from peace to war. And a lot of people that are in the Army now, especially leaders, because all the people that came in with me are retired, right? So all they know is wartime stuff. They don't know peacetime Army. So there's that transition of you were always a peacetime soldier, because then if the next conflict is in 10 years, all those leaders that have combat experience are going to be out. They're going to be retired out. So then that transition, because one of the leaders had read that a patrol was no more than 15 miles. So he would not let us drive around faster than 15 miles an hour. We're just rolling around Sadr City at 15 miles an hour because that's what he had read a patrol speed was. Where he read that, I have no fucking idea. Right? We're just rolling around at 15 on air conditioned, fucking soft, not armored Humvees. We had the doors hanging off of it, and we're just idling around, basically, fucking Sadr City, Iraq, in the middle of fucking summer. Not even fast enough to get airflow, And but that was that transition, because they didn't understand wartime, right? We were 15 days into the war at that point, right? People didn't understand that shit. They didn't. And at least the regular Army types, right? And so it took us about a month to get everything rolling, have some contacts, and the contacts weren't significant, but getting shot at, so you start questioning everything that you're doing once you start taking rounds. So we got rolling into it pretty good. Didn't have any casualties until October, and then. But right about that time was when basically the U.S. government stopped paying Mohammed al-Sadr, because we were kind of paying that guy to be good with us. And we did some fun things. We did joint raid with Triple Nickel. They had like 10 houses to hit, and they gave us 8 of them. And of course, they gave us all the ones that weren't likely, right?
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, though, man, you just don't know.
Yeah. And they could have been. that one smells like shit, so we're going to send those guys in there, right? But nobody knew. They just had these 10 houses to hit, and so they handed.
It's all intel based, and it's like the intel guys will be like, "Oh no, for sure, this is gonna be like, you're gonna be good here, jackpot all day long." You know what I mean? Like you're good, and you get there, and you're like, nobody's lived here in 10 years. Like absolutely not. Like,
Yep. And that's pretty much what happened with that. We found a bunch of this guy's uniforms. Like this guy was like a big Bob Party, general or something. And the only thing that came out of it was he had a brand new, well, I guess Saddam, like right before we invaded, or a couple months before that, had bought all the generals a purple Peugeot car. And it was like a turbo diesel, 5-speed. But we got one of those, and we're doing our radio reports back. We're like, hey, we got this brand new car that's got like 0 miles on it that's just sitting here. And it comes across the radio from squadron headquarters. Not Cool Squadrons, Cav Squadrons, right? But squadron comes over the radio and they're like, hey, bring that car back. We're going to use it to drive around the fog. And this thing is brand new. Like this thing like still has the window stickers in it. And we're like, okay, not a problem. We will bring this car back so they can drive around the fog. And so my PL's like, hey, great PL. That dude ended up, he was a butter bar and been at the unit like 3 weeks. He got there on the 10th of February. I got there on the 10th of March. So, that brand new. He's like, we're really bringing this car back so the squadron commander and then them can drive around in an air conditioned car in the fog. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, man, that's bullshit. I'm like, don't worry, sir, I got this. So we start driving. I got a Humvee Escort. So then I ran the car into the back of the LT Humvee, smashed the grill out of it. And then I brake checked the other Humvee and smashed the back end out of it. I'm like, oh, I need security in here. So, the windows weren't rolled down. So we busted the windows out of it. We got to have security. You got to have guns out, right? So yeah, in the 3 kilometers getting that car back, dude, I did my level best to destroy as much of that fucking car as I could before I got back to the. So, needless to say, they did not have an air-conditioned, brand new turbo Peugeot to cruise around the fog.
it was slightly dented.
Yeah, there's a couple dents in it, no windows. But that's what soldiers do, right?
Brand new-ish.
Yeah. It's only got 3 miles on it. I don't know what you're complaining about, right? But so we learned a lot in Iraq. One of the big things, like that big the first big lesson was, and again, this is peacetime regular army. First big lesson, small contact, nothing super significant. But shot a dude and knew I hit that guy. And that guy was just like, fuck you. I'm continuing to do it. I'm gonna do it again. Then I shot him twice because it was always that where you've been doing pop-up ranges. Right? So you hit the target on the pop-up range and the target goes down, right? And so you're like, so you shoot that guy, and then you give him 2 rounds. You're like, I'm going to give him the old double tap. That'll take care of it. Shoot him 2 more times, and that guy's still like, I'm still doing what I was doing. Fuck you. And so we finally put him down. And then started seeing where my rounds were. And even though those guy was super close and I had, M4 with the 68 on it, it was not good shot placement, right? And it was just, but that was the first time that I shot a dude, right? And I shot a lot of plastic, shot a lot of paper. But I was like, we're really not as good at this as we think we are. And then shortly after that, and this is a, man, it's kind of embarrassing, right? But everybody's been there. We got a platoon that's in contact, and they're like, "It's a tick," and we're like, "Fuck yeah, troops in contact!" And we're fucking read the QRF, get over there. So we're like hauling ass. I had like Kiowa Warrior doing bird dog for me.
I love Kiowas. They're so underrated.
Yeah, Kiowa comes in and he's like, He's like, wherever the kite was pointed, turn there, right? So I got the driver, and we haul ass across town, which is super fucking cool, right? And we get there, and we hear machine guns, and like everything's going off, and the platoon that was in contact, they're like hammering this fucking building. I'm like, fuck yeah, there must be a bunch of dudes in there, and this is gonna be good. No, Sarge, this is one guy with a revolver.
Oh no, come on.
Everybody stopped shooting, right? All the machine guns, belt feds, and he's like over the top of the wall of this building, and he's like, 16 gun trucks now, just fucking hammering. 240s, 50s, just fucking rocking this fucking building. Ceasefire, everybody stop shooting. Little revolver comes back to the top. Pop! Same thing again. This is going on for, I don't know. It felt like 45 minutes, but it was probably like 5, right? And then the guy throws the revolver. He's out of bullets. He throws a revolver where he tries to get out the back. Well, he ends up falling down the stairs and breaking his leg, right? So we get the guy because his other platoon is like getting ready to go in, and we're Cav Scouts, so we didn't fucking practice that shit. Because Cav Scout was not at the time we were supposed to be
supposed to stay hidden, recon.
Right? That's what yeah. And that was the purpose, right? So
if you guys were shooting, you
had to hit this thing, and they like fucking right. Yeah, it was we weren't even supposed to know. You're supposed to know we were there, right? And that was one of the reasons that I went Cav, because I was just like, hey, I can kill these people from a distance, and it'd be great. So they enter, find this guy. He's got a broken leg, not even a grazing wound on that guy, and we probably expended, probably like 2,000 rounds of ammunition. Like, that guy was in no danger, right? It's a fun.
I might know a guy.
It's a fun story.
I might know a guy that was on a minigun that had somebody about 25 feet in front of him at night, and like is just like, you hear the gun spin up, and he's just like, you know, and it just unloads, and then you got nothing. Like, it's just this big cloud of dust. And then the guy goes to take off, and then the TC in the truck like kicks the door open and falls out his side and ends up just like cut, and it eventually gets him. So minigun, 1,000, what is it, 4,000, 5,000 round a minute, whatever the hell it is. Nada. Yeah. Dude falls out the side of the truck, got him. Anyways, that's what that reminded me of. Sorry.
Yeah, and but that's everybody, right? There are stories like that with fucking everybody, right? And if there's a dude, a Delta Dan guy that managed to squeak through, and especially before the war, right? There was Delta Dan guys that hadn't killed anybody to start the war, and even with all that stuff, and that's what a lot of people don't realize is everybody's got that first contact, everybody's got that thing, nobody comes out of the room slaying motherfuckers, right? And there might be some dudes that are slaying motherfuckers, but they got their first one, right? Everybody's got a baptism of fire. That's why it's the thing. It's been that way since the beginning of time. So we get figured out, and then Sadr, the Sadr militia, he decided to stop playing with the U.S. and they did a fucking terrible fucking ambush on a platoon. They had, basically all the buildings in Sadr, about 3 stories on the average. Most anything was building 2 or 3 stories. There's a couple that were 5. But they had this section locked in with interlocking fields of fire, dude shooting from all 3 floors from 2 buildings, or from 4 buildings, 2 buildings deep, and just fucking, and we don't have armor, and just fucking hammered it. The fact that we only had 2 dead, and I think there was like 8 wounded out of that was just simply amazing. And that goes to the durability of the Humvee. And I wouldn't take a fucking Humvee anywhere right now with IEDs, but the Humvees kept running, and they just, one of the guys, the driver, got killed, so the TC reached over and pulled the hand throttle on it and was steering it using the hand throttle, and they managed to roll out of the kill zone just because the Humvees wouldn't fucking stop. Right? Otherwise, they would. But that was really the most terrible thing out of Iraq was that, and, some minor stuff, and had some wounded and stuff like that. But we got in and out of there, and that's why it became a benefit. Um, we got out of Iraq because we went in early. Our squadron went in early. We didn't get extended, and an extension. But what caused the extension of all that was IEDs and that sort of stuff, and the people that first Cav came into Sadr when Sadr was super bad, and they took more casualties in their first week in Sadr than we did the entire time that we were there. And it wasn't because we were so fucking good or anything like that. It was just that they got there in the worst fucking conditions, and we got there in the relatively bad conditions. But some of those lessons that we learned there, because we were teaching inner clear rooms in a fucking combat zone. We were relearning how to shoot in a combat zone. And really that's where we saw it as the MOS of Cavalry Scout. That they weren't going to be putting us in places to just sit around and fucking watch from a distance and call for artillery and shoot fucking missiles and all that shit. We just weren't going to be doing that anymore. And all the infantry dudes, they always would be like, oh, a Cav Scout, I'm basically infantry. My guys never looked at it that way because we have 16-man platoons. We were getting the same mission that a 40-man infantry. So the command didn't give a shit, right? So we would get this same mission, same sort of AOs. So I'd always be like, we must be twice as good as infantrymen because it takes 40 infantry dudes to do what we do with 16 dudes, right? And that just some of that heckling back. But they were literally and us the same mission. So that was a big thing from Iraq is you have to. I mean, it really set in the value of training before there's a plan, and it just.
I tell you what, man, you're right. Number one, you're right where it ends up setting that value in. And having been a dumb grunt at like one point in my life, I used to fall into that. I used to fall into that line of thinking, and all it takes is one time of observing what everybody else is doing and actually soaking that in, especially if one of them ends up dying for your dumbass, for you to open your eyeballs and go, I don't think it really matters what I have on my uniform at this point in time. I tell you what, there's a guy that's stacked up in the lineup for this podcast that he was a 92 Yankee, like supply clerk, right? 92 Yankee, if I remember right. Yeah. He was supposed to be setting up a LSA up north somewhere and then ended up running like convoy security his entire time, like as a gunner, just eating it. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I remember seeing MPs that were out doing presence patrols and shit like that. I remember seeing and that ain't their job, not even remotely close. I had a mechanic, shot 3 people. Mechanic.
And back if Russia would have invaded Germany in fucking 1994, that it might have been different for a little while, right? And you're in there where you're with the beer. But the 3 trips to Afghanistan, man, I took my third Afghanistan. We built a counter ID platoon, and I had every fucking MOS in that because it chose the PSD, and then they built counter ID, and it was whoever anybody would give up. Like there wasn't a criteria. Do you have a heartbeat? Are you in the unit? Okay, you're going over here. They didn't give a shit where they sent my platoon. They were like, you go there and do this. Do this thing with Ranger. Do this thing with take this. Be there. Watch for this. Watch fucking kill people. They didn't give a shit, right? IEDs don't care. IEDs don't care about your MOS. Rockets don't care, and sometimes you're better off. Like the easy job is being that infantry guy that's fucking out in this COP somewhere, and everybody's having to fucking deliver everything to you because you're doing local patrols, you're doing your COP security, And everybody else that's trying to bring you all your shit is in more danger than you are. Because if you've done your job right, you killed anybody that wants to fuck with you. So nobody's fucking with you. It's your cop.
That's right. As long as you
And then
make your point.
Yep. And then so you got 800 yards of basically you own at least 800 yards away from the cop. But every fucking buddy else that's bringing your mail and bringing all your stuff, they're catching all the shit. So they're in more danger than you are.
So
And
that's, brother, that is right where I like that statement of witnessing somebody else that has to lose their life for your dumbass. That's exactly where that came from. Alone, unafraid, off in Eastern Afghanistan, and having a route clearance package because I didn't order it, but somebody did. And it goes to drive past us, and you just watch the RCP just, less than a click away from you. And I mean, that whole area was bombed in. You couldn't drive in because of the way the roads were. Everything's just bombed. IED'd in the whole way. So everything's blown out. There ain't nowhere to go. You got to cross country your way over, and you're absolutely right. Like, while you might be soaking up more bullets, or at least the walls around you are, as long as you're not, you're doing okay.
Yep.
Yeah, those guys get it worse. The route clearance guys, the combat engineers. Yeah, I learned that.
Yeah, and then the because all the the supply dudes, when you have asymmetric warfare, talk ninja word, right? When you go from symmetric warfare where you're controlling where the front lines are and all that stuff into asymmetric warfare where the front lines is anything that's in front of your fucking eyeballs, 360 degrees, then all that MOS shit doesn't fucking matter, right? And so, leave Iraq, they sent me back up to Fort Drum. So out of my 22 years, I spent 15 of it assigned to Fort Drum, which worked out pretty cool in the end because my kid, she only missed she missed a year of school in the same school. It was the second semester of one year and the first semester of the other year. But she went to the exact same school other than those 2 semesters from kindergarten all the way until she graduated high school. And so that was like super cool for her.
That's awesome.
We were at Fort Drum that whole time, right? And so, and she went back for a little while in the summer. So, because we still had friends up there, so she went to visit her little friends in the summertime. So she only missed, of that. So she's got lifelong friends. Where a lot of military, kids didn't get that, right? They move, and every 3 years they're moving and stuff like that. So I mean, in reality, it worked good, but I was still stuck at fucking Fort Drum for 15 years out. So went back to Drum. Went to Afghanistan 2006. We started off in Coast, and then they moved us up to Nuristan. And Nuristan, we got up there, and I don't even remember what SF team was there, but they had a little team on this little cop, and we put a fucking cavalry squadron on top of those dudes. And so those guys were probably not super stoked with that. I mean, they had good security and a lot of stuff, but it went from that team owning the entire area to having at least a light colonel and everybody that came to visit being in their shit, right? So yeah, it kind of runs like the fun of that. I mean, you got sergeant majors and first sergeants that are running around and sounding like fucking Black Hawk Down and fucking that sort of shit. I mean, so that probably took a lot of fun out of it for them.
I mean, they weren't there all the time though, right?
No, they weren't there all the well, the commander. Yeah, the brass was there all the time because we put the whole squadron there. So
shit. You had the whole squad. Okay. Oh no.
Yeah. So there's captains and lieutenants.
Oh, what a nightmare.
Yeah. So but I mean it helped them out, but it also took a lot of the fun out of that deployment for them, I think. There's always nothing but problems. Fucking why do you got a fucking ball cap on? Why you got a fucking beard? All that sort of shit. But that deployment started off pretty slow. Then we went up to they sent us up to support some operation, and We had set in a little OP that was fucking nothing. We had an infantry platoon attached to us, so we're actually doing Cav shit. We got OP set, and we got a little CP set up there, and then infantry platoon. Wow. First they briefed it was like completely flat ground, and we get there and it's not. Like the support by fire that was supposed to be supporting this infantry platoon that came in a different way. Yes, on the flat map, because we had commanders that didn't understand contour lines. On the flat map, we were, half the weapons distance, so we were about, we were probably about 700 yards from where they were going to be operating at. But then we were also 700 meters above them, right? So we were really doing nothing but fucking, we could see everything they were doing was great, right? Yeah, doesn't matter. Well, the bad guys were paying more attention to the infantry platoon that was down there, weren't paying attention to us. They lit up the infantry platoon with dishkas and all sorts of stuff. I'm in a catbird seat, right? I'm on this OP, and so our guys started attempting to help, and they were shooting back from the main camp, and I'm on an OP. So bad guys start shooting at our main area, and I'm up here on this OP with my dudes, and nobody even fucking knows we are there.
Perfect.
So I got my pister up there, and we're doing mortars, and we ran 2 Apaches and an A10 Winchester and ammo. We were just slaughtering motherfuckers, right? And it didn't even have to have helmets on, right? Of course we did, but we're just up there just fucking like textbook Cav shit. Set it on the side of the mountain and fucking slaughter bad guys, and everybody else gets fucking shot at. I was just like, this is fucking cool. Well, they decided they're going to extend that operation. So we're just sitting there and we're on our OP. And they call me on the radio and they're like, hey, do you think you can set a Blackhawk down in there? And I was like, I'm not going to get a Blackhawk in here because I've got some trees. I got some stuff. I was like, he could do some drop shit. I was like, there's enough height, because I've been to air assault school and all that sort of stuff. I was like, there's enough height. You can probably get the back end of a Chinook in here to take stuff out. I was like, I'm not a Chinook pilot. And they're like, all right, cool. About 2 minutes later, I hear a fucking Chinook flying around. And I'm like,
that was fast.
Okay. And the Chinook basically pulls up to the LZ and he's just like the pilot's like, hey, I'm sitting down there because I don't have his fucking frequency or anything like that.
Yep.
And I'm like, hey, you need to turn around. So he comes in, sets the tail end on the side of the mountain. That picture where that's famous with like the Chinooks. Yeah, it was basically just like that, but I'm living it real time, right? I'm like, this is fucking cool. And they kick out a platoon. There's like, I don't even know these guys are coming, right? But there's a platoon that comes off, and they're coming off with generators and fucking all this shit. Like, all right, that's fucking cool. They get off, Chinook flies away, no big deal. About 4 days later, yeah, and then we went back to our little main camp, which was about 700 yards away, but it took 90 minutes to get there because we were on one mountain there and another mountain. So you had to walk down to the bottom, down in the valley. So they're like, hey, we're going to exfil at night. Chinooks will be here at here. They're gonna pick up these dudes. Once they pick them up, then they're gonna come over to our LZ and pick us up. All right, cool. So the Chinooks over there, and we're just watching. We're all in PZ posture, sitting on rucksacks and fucking just watching, got the nods down and watching. And the Chinook starts making a funny noise. I see the motors go to full throttle, because it starts glowing harder. What had happened was, instead of setting, if this is the side of the mountain, instead of tail setting like that picture that I talked about, that Chinook came in and tried to land here.
Oh shit!
Landed here, had a blade strike, and first rotor blade goes, second rotor blade goes. On that thing, they tried to lift the bird off to get away from the OP because they had 16 dudes on that OP. Pilot did the only thing he could do is try to get the crash away from those dudes and save as many people as he can. But they were still, because they were loading stuff onto the Chinook. So there were 6 air crew and four of that other platoon's dudes, or 3 of those other platoon's dudes. And what we didn't know at the time was the squadron commander was sitting in the jump seat. So watch the aircraft go in. And like I had friends in that little platoon, and so they were like, Sergeant Hess, get over there and see what you can do. So I grabbed like fucking 4 or 5 dudes, and we basically, when we made that trip, we made it earlier in the day. We had done it, and we'd done it 3 times total, and it took us 90 minutes each time. We were at the crash site in like 8 minutes, right? Fucking, it was basically like a fucking sprint down the mountain and haul ass up because we didn't know. And they're like, I like hear them calling on the radio, and still kind of, I don't want to say haunting because that's a little bit more extreme than it really is in my head. But for that whole like 40 minutes, the my first sergeant is on the radio trying to call, and they were Aries red, and he's on the radio and he's like, any Aries red element, this is Barbarian 7. Any red element, Barbarian 7. It was 40 minutes of him continuously, like every 15 seconds, trying to get somebody on there. Yeah, because we don't know if they were all on the aircraft because it'd been there for a minute, right? We didn't know if they were all on the aircraft and they were starting to pull out when the blade strike happened. We don't know. So we're hauling ass over there, and right as we're getting ready to round the corner to the crash site, somebody finally comes up on the radio. So that was like just a huge relief, right? And it was just like, you know, and it happened to be my good buddy. Like he was been in Korea with me, so I had known him for years at that point, right? And it happened to be him come up on the radio, and it's, I mean, for the anybody that's listening that hasn't been there, this sounds like a fucking super asshole fucking deal because you know people are dead. But when it's your buddy that's on the radio, they're just like an extra bit of fucking relief that's on there. You know, not that it's any better.
The weirdest damn thing, man. Like you always feel like a piece of shit whenever you like hear somebody got killed or somebody got hurt. And then for some reason, if you hear it's somebody that you weren't buddies with, you're like, oh, thank God, you know, or you're just like relief.
Yeah. I mean, and there's that, it's just that extra, right? It's just that extra thing. Cause your worst case. Cause when you got friends that are over there, you know, something fucking bad happened, you know, it's just extra worth. It's not really even relief, but it's like, it's not my buddy. Right. So it takes some of that edge off, right? Just dulls it. But you know, luckily they did lose 3 guys out of that platoon. But they had 16 people on the ground, and one of the guys, Anthony Pelosi, he was stepping up onto the Chinook, you know, and that rear ramp does. Everybody thinks that, you know, when they don't have the ramps down, like folded down, there's a step there. If you haven't tried to climb onto a Chinook, you know, for not you, for like listeners, there's a step, so you got to get that little bit of oomph. And he was in the middle of that hump when the bird dipped, and that height backwards, right? If his balance would have been just slightly forward, he would have fell into the aircraft. But he was just at that point that it kicked him backwards and he landed on his back. That actually becomes important later with Anthony. But the dude literally sat there and watched his friends, like in the platoon, because like the guy his buddy was getting ready to help pull him into the Chinook, and watched his friends get fucking killed. Yeah, just watched. I mean, just imagining watching the Chinook just go down to the mountain and fucking blow up. That is like, you know, and I watched it fly in the air, but I'm 800 yards away, right? I'm not looking at one of my best friends in the eye, or at least a guy that I know and I've been doing war with for 6 months, looking him in the eye as he goes away. But you know, so 10 dead. We spent the next days getting them collected, getting them up on the mountain, or getting them up off the mountain. But that put the squadron in a, because we lost 4 people out of the squadron, including our lieutenant colonel. And that squadron was, and I kind of skipped over this, but that squadron was brand new to the Army at the time. 2004, they expanded cavalry squadrons by, I think I just read something the other day. I think they expanded by 70%. So before, when I was at first at Fort Drum, there was like 35 cavalry scouts on Fort Drum, and by the time they did this expansion, there was like 350. Right, just and then they did that with all the light divisions, right? So this guy had been the squadron commander. He stood up the squadron. Joe Fenty was his name, and yeah, Ranger guy. If you ever spent time around the regiment, he was around there. But so that put the squadron in a really bad spot because some of the decisions that the command made at that point. And yes, Joe Fenty was a squadron commander and he was an officer, but everything was about Joe Fenty. There was nothing about Timmons or Moke One that was mentioned. The enlisted guys got kind of ignored, and then everything was about the squadron commander that got killed. And so that kind of caused some issues. But in reality, what it did was it put the squadron on an entirely of fuck you, fuck this mentality, which actually saved a lot of lives for the rest of the planet. Because we were mad, like we were fucking super mad. And we were mad at the army, we were mad at Afghanistan,
right?
We were mad at Taliban, Hig, whoever the fuck they were. And so then, and that was in May. And then in June, just a month later, we went to do this big, super big operation. We inserted we called it Kill Team. I'm sure there was a better name for it, but they took our sniper section and our Colt, well, our like Fister, and they turned a platoon into them because there was like six or eight snipers. There was like 6 or 8 Fister guys. They turned that into a platoon. So they were on Overwatch over what was going to be the objective. They got hit. So I think they had 16 total, 16 or 18 dudes up there. They got hit by 150 Taliban. And they had security out, and these guys got within, I don't know, like 80 yards before they started shooting. And everybody's like, how'd they get so close? Dude, the motherfuckers live there. They grew up in fucking Afghanistan. They know how to be fucking sneaky. So they got close. Liebert got shot right at the beginning. The first rounds that were going, there was a dude that was queued in. Whoever initiated the ambush or initiated the attack had sight on Liebert. And so Liebert went down right off the rip. And they were shooting at the basic little security LP that was about 80 yards away from their little main area. And both the guys out there got wounded. Got to Google up Jared Monty. Jared was trying to get through this little clearing over to that OP to get his guy that was wounded. Tried 3 times. Each time that he'd get ready to go to sprint from where they basically had some cover at, you tell everybody give him cover and fire. That's what you do, like, and you don't make it fancy. He's just like, hey, I'm going, covering. And so everybody shot everything that they had, trying to get him enough time to get down there. On his 3rd attempt, RPG landed basically at his feet, and the dudes that were still up there basically had to watch Jared bleed out because they couldn't even get to him. So
the President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3rd, 1863, has awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Staff Sergeant Jared C. Monty, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Staff Sergeant Jared C. Monty distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty while serving as a team leader with headquarters and headquarters troop, 3rd Squadron, 71st Cavalry Regiment, 3rd Brigade Combat Team, 10th Mountain Division, in connection with combat operations against an enemy in Nuristan Province, Afghanistan, on June 21st, 2006. While Staff Sergeant Monty was leading a mission aimed at gathering intelligence and directing fire against the enemy, his 16-man patrol was attacked by as many as 50 enemy fighters. On the verge of being overrun, Staff Sergeant Monty quickly directed his men to set up a defensive position behind a rock formation. He then called for indirect fire support, accurately targeting the rounds upon the enemy who had closed to within 50 meters of his position. While still directing fire, Staff Sergeant Monty personally engaged the enemy with his rifle and a grenade, successfully disrupting an attempt to flank his patrol. Staff Sergeant Monty then realized that one of his soldiers was lying wounded in the open ground between the advancing enemy and the patrol's position. With complete disregard for his own safety, Staff Sergeant Monty twice attempted to move from behind the cover of the rocks into the face of relentless enemy fire to rescue his fallen comrade. Determined not to leave his soldier, Staff Sergeant Monty made a third attempt to cross open terrain through intense enemy fire. On this final attempt, he was mortally wounded, sacrificing his own life in an effort to save his fellow soldier. Staff Sergeant Monty's selfless acts of heroism inspired his patrol to fight off the larger enemy force. Staff Sergeant Monty's immeasurable courage and uncommon valor are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, headquarters and headquarters troop, 3rd Squadron, 71st Cavalry Regiment, 3rd Brigade Combat Team, 10th Mountain Division, and the United States Army.
But in the meantime, he was the senior fister, so he had basically called for everything, even the broken arrow call. So he had aircraft stacked up. Like there was a B-1 that was over Bagram and basically went full afterburner and hauled ass out there. There was F-16s that were coming en route, but they got there about the time that he got hit. So the next fister in line starts dumping fucking everything. He's like, I want everything you have here, here, and here. When you're out of ordnance, fly away. If you still have ordnance, stay. So they killed a bunch of them. I think they ended up dropping. I think the body count was like 80 of them by the time the other ones broke contact. So they went to exfil the wounded, and the only way that they could get to them was to do jungle penetrator. So flight medic comes down and gets one of the wounded guys, brings it back up. Then it comes down to get the other wounded guy. The other wounded guy had basically been passed out. Well, he comes to, and basically his arm, he had like probably an inch and a half strip of skin that was holding his arm on. And they didn't do anything really with it. They put a tourniquet on it. But the flight medic was just like, let's get him up there and get him out of here. He was knocked the fuck out. He comes to about halfway up. So he had been bleeding out, and he was laying on the ground, and he was hurting. Then he wakes up, and he's like fucking 60 feet in the air. So he starts thrashing around. Well, that causes the cable to wrap. And the second most person that I don't even know his name, but he had been through basic and AIT and flight medic training, and basically these two had been in the Army the entire time together. And he was a crew chief. He's leaning out of the aircraft to try and grab the flight medic. And the flight medic is like, the way I hear the story, they were within a foot of each other, and the cable snapped. And so they dropped 60 or 70 feet, and neither one of them two made it. So I feel super bad for that guy, man. Imagine they weren't just battle buddies. They were like full-on friends. Like their families like partied together, and the kids were best as buddies. But your best friend in the entire world is at the tips of your fingers, and the cable snaps and goes away, and you never see him again, right? But so those two things being almost back to back, like we hadn't even healed from the first one yet. From that moment on, it was, if you even looked like you were a bad guy, if you smelled like a bad guy, you were getting pucked, you were getting wrapped up. If you didn't comply, you were getting fucking shot at. And so in August, we established what would eventually become COP Keating. It wasn't COP Keating yet, but we established that. It was called a PRT or something like that. And we got hit one night, like right at midnight. and I think there was 30 people on the camp, and we had another 20 people 5Ks away up on top of the mountain. And we took 62 RPGs in about 3.5 minutes. We weren't getting Dishka fire, but we were getting RPK, everything from 4 different fucking positions. And the dudes just went to work, man. Then there was nothing. I would love to just be able to sit here and just be like, hey, I did this, I did this, I did this. No, everybody just fucking went to work, and we just started slaughtering these motherfuckers. And
to be clear, you said 60 RPGs in like 3 minutes. That's insane.
Yeah,
because that was sat down at the bottom, right. So all those RPGs might as well be indirect fire, just fucking dumping on your head.
Yeah, they're
along with the PK.
Like, I remember, everything else is coming in. I remember it was about where our little tent sleeping area was basically, this thing had been like a tree farm, right? And we took it over. So they had for irrigation, they had little tiny irrigation ditches that were about, it was just miserable to walk across. Just deep enough to twist your ankle. It was probably about 40 yards from the perimeter wall, and that whole 40 yards I crossed under the light of exploding RPGs. Like, I remember it was daylight. Coming, I didn't even have the nods at her. It was so bright from all the RPGs coming in that I crossed that field, didn't even twist my ankle on it because I could fucking see everything. And then, like I say, we went to work, man. And my good friend John Hawes, he was with the sniper protection. I start running around the perimeter to do leadership, checking on people and all that. And the first time I see him, he's shooting an M4. And then I get back to my dudes and I'm checking around, and I run around again, and now he's got the M24. And I'm like, okay. And then I see him again, and I had just been over at their little area, and 50 was there, but it was in the Pelican case, right? So this thing is in a Pelican case, and the ammunition's in the magazines, but it's stowed, right? The Barrett. Yeah, 107. And next time I do get around the perimeter again, this dude's fucking shooting the fucking brick. I'm like, dude, when did you have time to fucking go to a Pelican case and fucking, it's not a slow process, right? It's not like 20 minutes putting it together, right? But it's still,
it's significant enough, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. And you get the barrel yanked out on this motherfucker, get it in place, load it, and now you're fucking running around shooting fucking 50. And it's just like, I needed the 50. And I'm like, all right, fucking cool, man.
Well, that's true. I mean, the 24 is only good for so far. So
yeah, right. Yeah, he's just like, he knew what he needed. He went and fucking got it. He just like I say, they went to work. And what we didn't know at the time was the guy that was supposed to run the dismounts attacking. We started shooting back so hard, so quickly, that he decided not to do the attack. But basically the attack that happened later in 2009 at the same spot was the same battle plan, except for they got the dismounts and we did not. But we get through the night. We had one guy take one little piece of shrapnel, get through the night, and again, that night didn't give a shit what your job was, right? Because it was either fucking shoot back or hide. But after that, we were even more mad, right? And in that area, because we knew how bad it could get that quickly. If you're on the side of the mountain walking with a flashlight at night, you were catching mortar rounds, right? And that's the, like, there's no reason to be walking around at night. And we put it out. We're like, hey, if you're walking around at night and we see you walking around at night, we're gonna fucking blow you up. And we weren't calling for anybody. Aircraft were 90 minutes out, so we didn't have to worry about any aircraft being in the area. So as you see dudes, you work up a grid, you drop mortars on them, and then you hit them with fucking machine guns. And that's what we did for the rest of the fucking plan. Then it was right day before Thanksgiving. I think it was either the day before Thanksgiving or the morning after Thanksgiving. And I can't remember where it fell on the date. But Our Delta company, which in the Cav Squadron, the Delta company is like your support company. So Delta had driven a LMTV out to that, what would become Keating, and it sat out there for months. And they were like, "Hey, we need this LMTV back because it's in perfect running condition, and ours are all broken. So we need this LMTV." We're just like, we understand that, but there's one fucking road, and the road wasn't wide enough. Like, the reason that the LMTV was still out there was because they were surprised it got out there in the first place, and everyone was too fucking scared to bring it back. Because the road was basically, I called it 7/8 of a Humvee wide, and the LMTV is just slightly wider than the Humvee. So the whole route, there were spots where, well, when we were running up and down that road, at night, I would take my night vision, I would flip them up. Because we were going north, like, if you look down, you're looking down the Humvee, there's the light, for the marker light. That was always hanging over the edge, right? And it was more stressful to see what the fuck was going on. I would rather just be like, the whole trip, you're just waiting for the Humvee just to fall out from underneath you. So they're on their way back. The movie, if you watch the movie Outpost, they took some liberty with that guy, staff sergeant, was actually driving, and Ben Keating was in the TCC. But they're coming back. It's nighttime, and the road gave way just enough, and or had given away in the meantime between the times that there wasn't enough room for the LMTV, and they got to that spot and they rolled down 250 feet down the mountain. Ben had been my platoon leader before the deployment. They took him over to be the XO right before we deployed. So he had been my platoon leader. That one fucking hurt a lot, because it was just senseless. There was no way that you could spin that, right? Monty was trying to fucking save his dudes and caught an RPG, right? The squadron commander was riding in the jump seat of the helicopter, making sure that his dudes all came out after an extra long mission that was supposed to be 3 days, and we're out there at 7 days at that point. That sort of shit, you can be like, helicopter broke, and that's what got Bradbury and Craig. You can understand that, right? But Ben Keating and Tiller got pretty fucked up. But Ben got killed bringing a fucking truck back. Somebody else broke all their other fucking shit, right? So then that just put us in a bad spot. And then to add on to all that shit that had happened with that deployment, we're 2 weeks from getting ready to rotate out, and they extend us for